Hey everybody, it's Luca from Rackets Runners. So I got kind of a new style of video today. I just finished playtesting the brand new or soon to be available J2FC Plus and J2NF from Honolulu Pickleball. I didn't want to rush the full review because I think there are a few more things I want to kind of get to understand about these paddles, especially regarding how they break in, and then especially customization, which we will talk about in this. So I wanted to record a first impressions video because I am so excited to talk about them. I couldn't wait to talk about them. And I think I'll be able to discuss a lot of the great playability here within a first impressions context that I'll kind of expand on when it gets to the full review. So hopefully you guys like this style of video. Obviously never really done anything like this. If you do, please like the video, comment. But yeah, we will be getting these paddles in the next few weeks. I believe end of July is what Honolulu Pickleball has told us. So very, very excited. You can check them out on our website, racketsandrunners.ca. And yeah, I am gonna start with the specs, the design and the technology as I usually do. I'm not going to get into too much detail just because it is a lot of information, and what I really want to focus on today is the playability, the way they feel, the way these two paddles in specific are different, because they are way more different than they look, and also kind of discussing where they fall in the general industry, how they compare it to some other paddles out there. But yeah, I'm super, super excited to talk about these paddles. So I'm going to talk about the specs real quick because they are identical in terms of spec. These are hybrid paddles that weigh between 8 and 8.3 ounces. The swing weight is 110 to 114 on both of them, which is quite low. And that's something I'm going to be focusing a lot of time on with this first impressions video, kind of explaining why that's a good thing, but also why that might be a slight problem, but also how you can correct it with potential customization. And then the twist weight is 7 on both of them, so pretty standard stuff there. The biggest difference between these two paddles, well, actually there are two fairly major differences. The first one is that the J2NF has a carbon fiber and fiberglass top sheet, this one here. So I think there's 3 layers. One of them is fiberglass, and then the J2FC Plus is full-on carbon fiber. So no fiberglass. Fiberglass does tend to be a little bit juicier, a little bit poppier, but to be honest, that's a much less important difference than the difference in cores. Now, you can see I have x-rays of the cores. This is the J2NF. This is the J2FC Plus. The J2NF has what Chris very eloquently put as a kind of puzzle core, where there's 2 densities of foam. There's the interior foam and then the perimeter foam, and they're almost woven in together. Then you got the J2FC Plus, which has almost a more standard construction, where the interior foam is kind of wrapped by the perimeter foam, but it's more of a diving board as well. You can see it's got a cut off, the perimeter foam, it's cut off there, so it's got more of that diving board style. I'm not sure exactly the scientific reasons for why this plays the way it does and this plays the way it does. All I can say is there is a pretty big difference in these two paddles' playability, and most of that comes down to the core. Now, I'm just quickly going to talk about the NFK and NFTI. They are identical to, the core design is identical to the J2NF. The only difference is the K is going to have a Kevlar top sheet, the TI is going to have a titanium or PET electroplated top sheet. That we can discuss in a future video, but you kind of already know the differences in playability there. The major thing is between these two paddles, which I think are kind of their flagship 4.5 gen paddles, which is what they're calling them, the core is very, very different. So now let's get into some playability. And the way I want to do this, talk about playability, is I'm going to break it down in terms of control, spin, power, maneuverability, all that good stuff. But I'm going to do it in the context of the clips that I have from my sessions. I do just quickly want to talk about the control and on both these paddles before I get into the clips. Basically, the J2NF, that L is going to be gone for obvious copyright reasons. The J2NF has a little bit more of a Gen 3 feel, where it has a springier, it almost feels a little bit hollower, but it has that springiness to it. But there is a difference between this and like a Gen 3 Yola, or even a Pro 4, or even a Rhombus Ripple. Those feel like they have a much, much longer dwell time. I had the Ripple out while I was doing this test, And with the ripple, the ball just sinks into the paddle face for quite a bit longer. This has a firmer feel, but it still has that springy feel. So for control, springiness without dwell time definitely was a little bit tough to control. And I didn't have nearly as much of a problem with this. This almost feels more like a True Foam Genesis, where it's got that softer foamy feel. It doesn't have that kind of spring, like firm springiness to it that Gen 3 paddles have. But this paddle, the J2FC Plus, is definitely softer, plusher, more easy to control. And it does feel like it has a slightly longer dwell time as well. So here is a good place to start. I want to break down control into 3 sections: drops, resets, and dinks. Here I'm hitting drops, and you know, a little bit overpowered on that drop, but generally speaking, I had pretty good control on drops. Now, the major difference between drops and resets for me is that drops, you have time to think about the ball that's coming to you, because it's the ball that's coming to you isn't super offensive. So, you know, you have a little bit more time to set up and feel your way through the contact point. Resets are where you kind of have to like react instantly, and you definitely need a little bit more trust in your paddle. There's a reset. This, okay. I'm not saying I would always pick this up, but if I had a little bit more dwell time, a little bit more feel for the ball, I feel like I could pick this up. And this is where I want to talk about what I think this paddle needs, which is lead tape. Adding lead to the sides here basically means you're gonna have a little bit more swing weight, and you're gonna crush into the ball a little bit longer. What crushing into the ball more will do is extend your paddle's dwell time. And that's really the big problem here, I think, in terms of control for me, is the dwell time is too short relative to how powerful it is. And that's where, in this clip here, like, I'm trying to feel it. You can see I'm really trying to like extend my follow through as much as possible to feel the ball as much as possible, just not quite getting there. And yeah, I'm not able to pick it up. So yeah, quickly recapping, very good for control. I just want a little bit more dwell time to control the power. So great all around paddle, but I think this is where the J2FC Plus is a pretty solid leg above the J2NF. So when I was playing, you know, a tighter game with tighter points, I did default to this one quite a bit more. And that's because it has more of that true foam plushness to it rather than that Gen 3 kind of springy, like firmer, springier feel to it. I think that's a really good example of where I'm just a little bit more confident with this paddle's control. I don't have a great backhand. This ball comes to my backhand, and I just am able to kind of trust that feel, that dwell time, that softness. It's not going to overpower it as I guide my stroke through contact. And there you go. I hit a pretty good, you know, two-handed drop, and then we win the point there. Okay, so that's the control difference. Easier control on the J2FC Plus, slightly harder, springier feel to the J2NF, which makes it more difficult to control. Now let's talk about spin. And yeah, both these paddles have top tier spin. That's one thing I want to make clear right away. But kind of going back to what I was talking about with control and how this kind of does spring the ball out pretty quickly without that quite as much dwell time, I do feel like the soft spin game is noticeably better here. Now on drives, even up at the net, when you're hitting, you know, when you have time to hit these full-on spinny volleys, this has so much spin. This is a shot where I didn't have a ton of time to set up, but and this goes back to why we are splitting hairs when I like criticize the soft spin game of this paddle compared to this paddle. Again, these are both elite paddles at pretty much everything. So you definitely can hit flickier soft spin shots. Like that got a good amount of shape on it. This is not a super easy shot here. I just flick the face at it and it generates that shape. So I just think it would get a little bit better if the paddle crushed into the ball a little bit more, but still very, very good. Yeah, okay. This is a good example of what I'm talking about. So this is a pretty good shot, but it's not a deadly shot. Like this does go pretty high, and my opponent, like we could have lost this point. That ball lands 2 feet closer. we lose the point. This is an example where I'm coming from low to high. And with poppy paddles, paddles that have a lot of inherent power, paddles that spring the ball, when you come from low to high like this, and they don't have the dwell time to really shape it as you follow through with that spin shot, because you're coming from low to high, if it pops out early, it's going to go up instead of, you know, you cradling the ball and like shaping it over the net. And I think that's part of the issue that I have with this paddle right now in stock form, is that it doesn't cradle the ball enough when I really want to like focus on that pocketing to shape it. I wonder if I had any big spin shots here. I think I probably do. Another decent backhand volley. I think here is, yeah. Okay, so here, as you can see, I've got the full-on stance, the setup. I've had the time to set up a drive, and that's a pretty good shot. As you can see, you know, I brush up, I get the spin, it dips pretty low. I do think with some other paddles here, I'd be able to generate more shape. Like the ball, you know, starts here and it goes on a fairly horizontal, you know, it doesn't go up too much and then back down. So it's enough shape, but I do think if I had that little bit extra dwell time to really shape it, I could have this dipping lower than just hip height, which would be a tougher ball to pick up for the opponent. And here, I mean, again, good. Like I slow it down here on my backhand. I didn't drive through it as quickly, and I do still get the up to down motion, which is something I really struggle with on my backhand. And, you know, get a little bit lucky with the let cord there, but yeah, pretty good spin there. I just think when we compare it to what I'm playing with now, which is the J2FC Plus, you're going to see quite a bit more shape with this paddle, starting with that ball. Yeah, I mean, this is example number one. This is the perfect example of a shot I was super confident hitting with the J2FC Plus that I wasn't confident hitting with the J2NF. You see here, this is a great return. This goes super deep. It's bouncing pretty horizontally. Not a ton of verticality to this ball for me to set up, and I'm not set up here. Like I'm scrambling for this ball, and so I quickly make a decision here. I can't drive, so I'm going to third shot, spin drop, and I brush up really, like, you know, not a ton of racket head speed there, but I try to get that brushing up motion, and look just how much shape this ball has. Like that ball goes, that is a ton of arc. That goes from super low to super low. I mean, that's almost at the feet. And that's just an example of a paddle that is elite for soft spin shots, and I cannot say the same about this. And you go back to the ball I hit, I think it was maybe here. Yeah, this one here. I mean, different. This is more of a drive for sure, but the spin, you can see there's way less, you know, down to up to down motion here. That's a much more horizontal shot compared to this, which has, you know, so much shape on it. So that is the biggest difference between these two paddles in the soft spin game, or sorry, in the spin game, is that I would say this is much easier to hit soft spin shots than the J2NF, with the major caveat being I think this will be also absolutely elite once I add some weight to it. But in stock form, definitely this one. Okay, power. I think it's pretty obvious with what I've been saying. The J2NF is pretty clearly more powerful than the J2FC Plus. And that's both in terms of full-on power and in terms of pop. And that goes back to what I was saying, where it has that more Gen 3, that like kind of that trampoline effect is definitely there. I will say it does feel more like that helps its top end power more than its pop. Like this is closer in terms of pop to this than it is in terms of top end power. When you do generate a full stroke and activate that trampoline effect, you can hit really, really big shots with this thing. But let's go through it here. So I'm playing with the J2NF right now. Yeah, I mean, that's much more power than I'm used to. I mean, obviously here, I'm not generating a full-on volley, and the pop I get there is really solid. Yeah, I mean here, this overhead, You know, this first shot, pretty good amount of power. That overhead this is classic Gen 3 overhead stuff, where that bounce off the overhead is like, obviously not as much as a tennis ball, but most pickleball paddles do not generate this amount of bounce off the overhead. Now, obviously, the angle wins the point here, but if this was slightly less angled, that is a high velocity overhead, and that's just the potential that this paddle has. It has that Gen 3 spring to it, where you can really, like a tennis racket, you know, bounce the ball off the paddle face. Whereas now I think we're going to switch to the J2FC Plus. The pop is good. The pop is excellent even, you know. You'll see some clips there where the pop is really good, but it doesn't have that kind of load up on the power and just kill it type of spring that this does. It has more of that true foam feel almost, where the way it kind of shoots the ball out just feels like the foam is soaking up some of that energy instead of just really, really springing it the way the J2NF does. And that's a huge part of why it's you know, pretty significantly better for control, in my opinion, but that is also why it doesn't have quite as much top end power. So let's look at the clips now. And this is top end power. Yeah, I didn't. So here I decided I'm gonna hit, like, you know, full on core rotation backhand volley, trying to like really crush it as far as possible. And I just think that type of motion, like that is a full on, I'm putting all the power I got into that ball. With a more powerful paddle like a Gen 3 or the J2NF, that would have had a little bit more to it. I think a little bit more oomph, if that makes sense. All right, so let's talk about maneuverability now. So yeah, this is the last section. Now, the reason I want to talk about maneuverability is because I don't play with hybrid paddles that much, especially not at this low of swing weight. My God, this is a breath of fresh air to play with. I mean, I hit some reaction shots here that I do not hit usually, ever. And that is definitely because of the low swing weight, because of the slightly shorter profile. And the reason I think it's important to note that is that is in stock form. I have been saying throughout this review that especially the J2NF, I want to customize. In fact, I think I would need to customize if I want to play with it. So that if I do customize it, a big part of the full-on review is going to be me explaining how, you know, what kind of benefit that has on ball feel, dwell time, and control, but also how it negatively affects maneuverability. So just keep that in mind. So just kind of recapping the first impressions, which, I mean, it's going to be kind of weird first impressions video because I think it's going to be really long, but I do consider the J2FC Plus to be a slightly more well-rounded paddle, just because I think it strikes that better balance of control with power. This has more power, but it doesn't have quite as much control. And I think more people will feel more comfortable with the J2FC Plus, at least in stock form. And that's kind of where I want to finish off with this. I actually think this paddle has a little bit more potential because it has higher power at that low swing weight. And more power is, you know, generally a very good thing in pickleball. The only thing is, if I want to control that power, I'm gonna have to get a little bit longer dwell time out of this. And I think that's going to be very, very possible because there's a ton of space to work with customization here. The swing weight is like, you know, between 110 and 114. You got realistically 10 points at least to work with there. So you can put a lot of lead on this thing. And depending where it is static weight wise, I mean, 8.5 is the minimum I'd want it probably for stability. So I got space to put it in the handle and a bunch there. So currently I think I would pick the J2FC Plus in stock form if I had to play competitively with either of these two paddles. But yeah, two really, 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 really good paddles from Honolulu Pickleball. I'd love to try the J2NFK and J2NF I don't think they would be too different to this one. Like, I don't think the difference would be as big as the difference between these two paddles, but I'd love to get my hands on those as soon as possible. And yeah, I will be testing them a lot more, so stay tuned for the full review. That should be coming out in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, maybe 2-3 weeks. And then we will be getting the paddles, I think, around the end of July. So you can check that out. on our website, racketsandrunners.ca. But yeah, other than that, that is going to be the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.